What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Headhunter Hideout live show. I am excited today to have Sharon with us, and Sharon has, she's been in the business for a little bit of time here, but it's been highly successful in the tech space. She is the CEO and founder of a company based out in Arizona called Tech Finders, and she started out in a business before LinkedIn, Google, all the good stuff, and she is just killing it in everything that she's involved in. She's won multiple awards locally and nationally, and we're super excited to have her on the show. So, Sharon, welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Thanks, Joel. First of all, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. You are, yeah, you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, because I'm having a little bit of a hard, it's like garbled a little bit. So I'm hoping I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, you sound great to me. So I sound garbled or?
Yeah, it's a little bit garbled.
Okay. Well, I think on my end you sound really clear. So hopefully hopefully people can hear us out there too. So if anyone is out there, let us know if you're having any audio issues. I know it looks like Gulam just says hi. So hi Gulam, good to have you out there. Anyone else who's out there, feel free to interact. And yeah, so can you why don't we just get started, and hopefully if there's any audio issues there, hopefully it's just on your end. But I'm curious, why don't you just kind of introduce like how you got started in recruiting, a little bit about your story, and a little bit how you got into the industry. I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, so thanks, Joel. I think you were asking me about how I got started in the industry. So
Yep.
I got started way back, as you were mentioning, before there was Google, the internet. I started really from scratch after my infant son was born. And I had been working for another company for about 3 years. And I always talk to a lot of different recruiters, and we always say the same thing. We kind of stumble into recruiting. No
Yep.
one's born saying, hey, I want to be a recruiter when I grow up, especially, when I started in the industry. So I had found another company through an ad. They said they will train. And I went in there and I just instantly loved it. I loved being able to help people, make an impact to people's lives, and just instantly knew this was something that I wanted to do for, a really long time. And then I became pregnant with my first son, and I had moved up quickly. I was managing an office in Tempe, and I became pregnant. And so, way back then, my thought was, well, I'm just going to, have this baby real quick and, you know, work and, have a babysitter. And in my mind, it was just really easy, right? Um,
Yep.
and it wasn't until I saw my son for the first time where I thought, okay, my life, my world just completely changed. And so at that point I knew that I wanted, the first thing I thought, I was like, I quit. Like, I quit my job, which is something I never thought I would, say. So during that time, there really was no telecommuting, there was no work from home option at all. So I had to make that decision. And at the same time, I knew I was, definitely someone who wanted to have a career. Our household was a two income family. So I knew I had to make, at that time, I was in my third year, but I was making six figures, as a recruiter already. So I knew, okay, I have to make this money up. I have to make at least $100,000 back then, which probably right now it's a lot more. It's probably like 300 or 400,000, comparatively. So anyway, so I knew I wanted to do things differently. And every time my son would go down for a nap, I thought, okay, how can I do this differently? What, tools do I have? And at the time it was a corded phone, a phone book, and a fax machine. And so I just sat on my floor and thought, okay, I was in my spare bedroom. We didn't have furniture in there. So I was on the floor and just thought, okay, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to start out and really, I always tell people there was no magic, there was no plan, even though now I'm all about plan. And when I coach and mentor other recruiters, I say, you definitely like, we need a plan. But at the time, I just knew I have to make ends meet and I have to make this work. There was no plan B. And that was probably one of the best things for me, was that there was no plan B. It's all I knew how to do.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, I'm having
Okay.
technical difficulties here, but I can hear you fine, which is good because it was garbled before. So now I can
Yep.
actually hear you.
No,
So
that is good. And Kevin did just say, he said audio is good on both ends. So you sounded great the whole time.
okay,
So
thank you. All right, good.
but
I was
now
like,
you can hear me. That's a good thing too. So I'm glad.
that's awesome, Joel. Yeah, I was like, this is gonna be a long, like long for you guys. And anyway, so I think one of the most important things that I learned very early on was it just was all about being super consistent and persistent. So those are always my two words. It doesn't really matter how smart you are, how much you know. It's really, if you have those two things, you can really do anything and you can learn along the way as you go. So my company, just organically and very, very slowly. I always consider it like a turtle. We slowly grew over a long period of time. Um, and fast forward, many years, we were an Inc. 5000 company 2 years in a row back in 2015 and 2014.
Awesome.
I've grown a team of great people that, are super passionate about what they do. And we've just grown this huge network. It's mostly locally right now in Arizona, because that's where we've always been. And pre-COVID, it was always about, being able to really go out to our clients, see the culture, see the environment, and personally meet our candidates. So things have changed obviously now, but it's also created a lot of opportunity. And so that's something that I've had to look at throughout COVID and just say, okay, this is definitely a difficult time for everyone. And for the recruiting industry, it's been challenging in a lot of ways. But there's always opportunity. So it's always about looking at that silver lining and saying, okay, what is this teaching me? And what now do I need to go and pivot to and be decisive and make some decisions from there. So currently, we are doing more nationwide searches
Yep.
and started out doing technology recruiting, but now we also have two other divisions. So we have an HR division. So we place corporate HR recruiters and HR professionals. And then we also have a finance and accounting side. So I have
Awesome.
different recruiters and different account managers that specialize in that area. And yeah, and so we're continuing to build and grow on that.
So one of the things that you said was that you organically grew. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and kind of what that looks like organically growing to you, and even with the slow growth, like I'd just love to hear about that process. And how did you grow at the beginning? I mean, were you just hitting the phone super hard? Were you relying on kind of client relationships and referrals? Like what did that organic growth look like?
Yeah. Because we had limited tools, and I think sometimes, I always coach people. Sometimes we can do too much or we try to be everything to everyone. So using set tools, for me, it was definitely the phone, and it still is, I think, for a lot of recruiters. But that organic growth is really all about those relationships. And Joel, I know you can, attest to that as well. It's really about getting a great client and a great relationship and really listening to them and seeing what they need and how we can help them.
Yep.
Then you know do what we're going to say that we're going to do and provide great talent and great resources, and stay in that lane and not try to get too far as far as your thinking or your planning, but really stay present in what your clients are needing.
Yeah.
So when I
No,
say
I
we're,
love that.
it's about really getting entrenched in each client that we work with, um, and then meeting other people, because if you do a great job, then you're going to get referred to different departments and different hiring leaders, and your candidates are going to rave about you and refer you, and maybe that candidate turns into a client. So when I say organic, yeah, it's kind of like it started from one really great client, and then it just kept building upon itself.
Yeah, no, I love that. And Kevin just asked, he said, future question. I wonder, as a result of the pandemic, and I know you touched upon this a little bit, but just how have you had to pivot your strategy? So I'm assuming maybe that's the strategy of like recruiting. Has like anything changed for you in your approach or the way that you're kind of coaching your team on how to reach people? Or yeah, just I'd be curious to hear that too.
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of clients throughout the years. And so when the pandemic hit, yes, my strategy completely changed in a lot of ways. So, not only with the clients that we were working with, so looking across the board, there were some clients obviously that went through layoffs and are still going through layoffs. And then, there's some clients that are in industries that are just expanding, because of COVID.
Yep.
And so it was really, we went client by client and really addressed, okay, how is this client how is their business going to change? And how can we come alongside them? So we had one client where they had a large call center. And typically we didn't staff for call center, technology or, call center professionals that often. But what they needed were contract staff that could actually stand in the lobby and basically just screen people as they were going into the call center, for temperature checks, making sure they weren't sick, asking them a series of questions. And they needed, over 20 people because they had several different locations and different shifts.
Sure.
So typically we would not have taken that, that wouldn't be something that we would say that we do. But the opportunity arose and we had an existing relationship with that client. And so it just made sense, business sense for us. And also we were helping them get their workers back, to the office. So that was one of the things that we changed. The other thing was just getting very, even more niche specific. So trying to be everything to everyone, really in any market, is difficult. But during a pandemic, I think it's a time to really, really grasp and get narrow on where do we make the most difference, and where's our expertise, where's our pipeline. So that was the
Great.
strategies, that we took. From an operational standpoint, it was also, where are we spending money that we've always spent money on, maybe, but do we really need to be spending that money?
Hmm.
So just, from a financial aspect, it was looking at every single one of our expenses and saying, do we really need to keep doing this? Especially if you've been in business for a long period of time. Sometimes I was doing things just because we'd always done it that way. And with COVID, all of a sudden, nothing's the same. So it was the perfect opportunity to really look at everything and go, we don't need to be doing that. So we were able to really, really cut back in some areas and then expand, in others.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
And great breakdown there too. That's a great way to answer that. And then I know Tom just asked too, would love to hear how you have grown your team over the years and what is your hiring and retention strategy. And I know this has come up quite a lot, and I'm always curious to hear from an owner standpoint how you actually bring people into the industry and you make sure that they're successful. Like what's your approach on that in terms of like mentoring people and you're making sure that they're coming into the industry to be successful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. And so I think that's an area where I've definitely had a lot of experience. I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, I would say. Um, and so I think it's a learning process too for an owner, because usually we're really good at finding people for our clients and for other
Yep.
people. And then when it comes to our own business, it seems just to be different, right? So, I've tried a couple different things. I'll tell you about one that probably didn't work as well as I anticipated it to work. And that was, I've always had a passion to teach and train and coach other recruiters. And so I thought, wow, it's really hard to find experienced recruiters that can come in and have the same philosophy and passion and, you know, do things the way that we feel is important, to adapt our process, because a lot of times they already have their own process and it's kind of difficult to either retrain or, have someone follow our process if they already have a lot of experience. So we decided, it was probably it was 2 years ago almost, and we decided to just start from scratch and really hire, new people, almost like a training class. So we would hire multiple people at one time, and I had a national trainer that I would bring in,
Yep.
who lived across the country, but I would fly him in quarterly, and he would train our team, and then he would do trainings with them, each week on the phone. So the concept is awesome, and the trainer, I mean, he was amazing, but I realized that it just didn't work as far as a model for a small recruiting company to come in and have people that really don't have any experience and try to get them up to speed quickly while you're still paying them, pretty decent, like competitive salaries. It's,
Sure.
we've always, my philosophy has always been like, bring people in and really give them, you know, just all the tools and a great salary already to start. So anyway, long story short, it was something that we did for a whole year. And then at the end, as far as retention, it was just something that I was like, you know what, that probably, I wouldn't do that again. Like I wouldn't do that, which we didn't, we didn't do that last year. So it's tough. I think that, one of the things that has worked the best is when you can bring someone in and really give them a good person to coach with, and give them an opportunity to really get on the phones and start doing the job as quickly as possible. So, with recruiting, a lot of it, like we were talking about, it's all about relationships and having those conversations. And sometimes you can do all of that training, but then at the end of the day, you just have to, you have to pick up the phone and, you have to do the work.
For
So
sure.
that's really worked the best, is when we have a blend of training and then they can actually go and, and do it. But as far as retention, I mean, we've always had very good retention. We had, people that would come in and stay for a long time, because we try to create a great working environment and give them all the tools and, everything that a recruiter would want. Um, Really, I think that the structure is going to change a little bit in the following year, because what I identified from again, this is kind of from an operational standpoint, from like an owner standpoint, you
Yep.
have to look at it and say, what's my goal for my company? Is my goal to scale and become like the next, Robert Half or Tex?
Rod Sod or something. Yeah.
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 Or is my goal to really create this boutique, um, impactful company where maybe the owner is still part of the process? Like for me, I love working with candidates and clients. It's just, it's just something that's in my blood. If I get too far removed from the business, which I have been over the years, you kind of lose that sense of what's going on in your industry, and,
For sure.
the challenges that maybe your staff and team are experiencing. If you're too far removed from it, you're kind of out of the trenches too much. So for me personally, I like that blend. I like talking to clients. I like doing business development. I like, working with candidates. So it was kind of by trial and error throughout the years. I thought, I want to, you know, I could grow and I could become a lot bigger, and I have in the past. We've had up to 17 recruiters in our office, but I really realized personally, I like that smaller company feel where, I'm part of the impact.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's been something that's been important. But I think from an operational standpoint, like we were just talking about, just because your revenue is big and you have a number of people, the most important thing, or one of the most important things from a financial standpoint, is your profitability. So, your revenues could be really high. You could have a huge team, but your revenue, actually, your profit rather, could be smaller, than what it
Yeah.
was actually smaller as a company. So I think it's just important to identify like what's the goal, overall, and then work your way back from that and determine, okay, based on where my goal is for my company and as a lifestyle too, what kind of company do I really want to create? And sometimes that changes, if you're in business for a long period of time, what was once your dream might shift, and you might have a different vision and version of it, as you grow as a company. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No. And I think particularly in recruiting too, I mean, I think there's definitely like you reach that point where maybe you're independent, you're by yourself for a number of years, and then you start to expand. But it almost seems like there's levels. Like you might start off with a team of 5 to 10, and then there's like that next leap to 30 to 40 people. And it's just like each level comes with its own complexities. And you're right. I mean, it comes down to, as an owner, what are you are you looking for that really tight knit team, or are you looking for like a profit machine? And but I think it's a challenge, because you might sacrifice things like service, or you might bring people the bigger you scale, the harder it is to keep that culture. So I'm curious, like going forward, are you I mean, like with like remote work and things like that, I mean, had you done remote work or had flexible options in the past? And is that something that you're thinking about for the future? Or what's your take on that within the recruitment industry?
Yeah. So, prior to COVID, we were all in the office. Most of my team was there every single day. And obviously with COVID, everyone, we started working from home. And what I realized was that you could really have a remote team that is still very cohesive, and you don't have to be in the same city or, even state. So it is, that's one of the things when we talked about, how has it changed? That's definitely one of the things that has changed for us as well. Um, we
Have
actually
you onboarded anybody new while you've been remote?
No. Uh-uh.
Okay. Because that's one of the I think that's one of like the big challenges that I would see, just in terms of like how you learn in recruiting. And you kind of learn from hearing those conversations, or you've got the guy next to you that's doing a counter offer, and then someone else right behind you that's handling closing a candidate, and you almost learn so much from that. And so I'm curious, like what your thoughts would be on like bringing somebody new into that type of environment, and like how you would approach that training remotely.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And fortunately, we've had the same team throughout COVID. So, but you're right, like onboarding and trying to train someone, is definitely, it's going to look different. So, what we're going to do for next year is we really are focused on creating more of that independent recruiter network.
Cool.
We're working with people and recruiters that share that same vision, as my company, but they might, obviously be in a different location. Some of the things that we do as far as our team cohesiveness is we get on every single morning, we have a call with all of our team members. So we get on a Zoom sprint and we go over any changes, in the orders that we've had, any challenges that we've had in recruiting for that particular position, any updates, from our managers, because as we all know, I mean, with recruiting, everything changes like minute by minute.
Right.
So being able to, get on that call,
Yep.
um, and also too, as we do grow and, bring on other recruiters after, the new year, I think it's all about, like you said, creating those mastermind opportunities where we can get on a call and it's not, about any particular topic, but it's about, okay, what challenges are coming up?
Yep.
What happened in the last couple days with candidates, or with a client? How would someone else handle that? Because the best way to do it is like what you were saying, is learning from others that have been there, done that, or maybe they're going through something at the same time. So really trying to bring in more trainings and more opportunity for people to bounce ideas off of more frequently is something that we're going to be adding next year.
I love that. And Kevin just asked again. He said, "Are there any tips or strategies that you're giving your clients in 2020, or I guess 2021, to be successful in the hiring process, given the challenges they face with the remote recruiting? So that would be like your clients. Like what are you, how are you advising people in terms of like things like video interviews, or have you changed any of like your process with video interviews, or how have you I guess how have you been
Yeah.
adapting?
Yeah. So nowadays, really all of our clients are doing video interviewing and hiring because most of them are still either, all remote or for the most part, mostly remote. So yeah, video hiring now is the norm. Whereas before, yeah, it was even just having a video interview. It's like our clients always wanted to see that person, face to face. So we always, encourage our clients to get on video as soon as possible. Sometimes they want to, start out with a phone call, but I think the more you can build that rapport through video and you actually can see someone's, nonverbal communication and body language, and see their face, and expressions, I think that that's always helpful. Right now, what we're facing is that there are some of our clients that are back in the office. And especially on the technology side, they want their team and their new hires
Yeah,
office right away, which is, completely, I can see the value in that for sure. But from the candidate side, we're finding that there is a lot of pushback, for a couple different reasons. One, either they're hesitant and they don't feel comfortable being in a work environment every day, even if there is 6 feet, apart from their coworker. Or they've gotten used to being remote and they actually really enjoy it and they feel like they're more productive and they don't have that commute, that they used to have. Or they have homeschooled kids where just, you
for
know,
sure. That's a
the
huge one.
yeah, like right now, I have kids in the bedroom. I had to go tell them like, please don't come in between 12, but yeah, so you have to kind of adjust and, so we're really, really telling our clients, if at all possible, like we understand how you're feeling, but to get the candidates that you want, especially like with technology, we're looking for a lot of developers and, administrators. Um, and they can't find those people. And so they're coming to us, for that solution. And the candidates are out there, but they just want more of a remote opportunity, and our clients are needing them in the office. So again, it's about that blend, like, okay, what can we do? We can educate our clients on what we're seeing, that they really could get those positions filled if maybe there's a little bit more flexibility or a blended option. So, I think just
I personally love the blended option, like,
yeah,
and I think, I don't know. I guess I just have that feeling of like, once you get to a certain level, or just a certain maturity within your career, I think having the choice of whether or not you want to be in the office in general is great. But I don't. It's hard, man, when you're onboarding someone new, because as a culture, there's maybe processes, and it might be helpful to be around people. So it's but then obviously if you've got kids that you need, and they're at home. I mean, there's definitely a lot of issues that come up. So it's what do you do you think, like with your clients, is that a huge issue, or if you've seen people like actually lose the opportunity because they just haven't been willing to do that, or have you had anything come up like that?
yeah. I mean, daily we have candidates that are really qualified. They'd be a great fit for that client, but the client needs them in the office. And they just, because there are so many opportunities now for people, even if they are in Arizona, I mean, they can be applying to companies and positions all over the country, which again, we're seeing that more and more through COVID. So I think that, there's candidates that will just say, I'm not interested because they do have, I mean, they have a lot of options, even though we're going through that pandemic. I mean, there's a
Very
lot
interesting.
on, like, there's still a lot of hiring happening. So, yeah. So again, I think as recruiters, we just, that's something that's kind of a challenge. There are more people looking, but there's also, can a lot of candidates and people that are holding out really because they have a lot of other opportunities.
For sure. Well,
Yeah.
and Gabe just asked, you just said, we've got one more question after this, and I just want to pivot things. But
Yeah.
just said, have you ever misplaced a candidate in a position that didn't work out for that particular business client? And then has anything like that ever cost you a relationship with a client? So I guess that's like, have you ever just had a bad placement and it hasn't worked out and lost a relationship over that?
I'm trying to think if we've lost. I mean, yes, definitely we call them, fall offs happen. Um, and you know, sometimes we don't have control over after that placement happens. Although, as recruiters, we always want to. We always want to be able to control everything, right? But there are times where it's not a good fit or something happens. I mean, we've had people that we place where all of a sudden they need to leave, move, their spouse gets a job offer or whatever. There's a myriad of reasons. So I think that, just the really important thing is to have that relationship with the client and just to be extremely, authentic
Yeah.
and let them know exactly, what is going on with the candidate. Just have that transparency, and also that follow up. So constantly, after that placement is made, our job really is not done. Sometimes recruitment, you kind of think, okay, that placement's done, I'm going to move on. But really, that
No.
part, especially if it's a direct hire, sometimes
Yeah.
people, recruiters could think that, okay, my job's done, but following up and hearing how's it going, are there any challenges? A lot of times you can catch something with a candidate, they just uprooted and changed everything in their life by taking that job. And sometimes we can forget that they're in a new environment, they're with new leaders, their coworkers are totally different. Before the pandemic, it was, even their commute was different and where they went to lunch. I mean, it's a major factor. So I think as recruiters, it's important for us to remember like the human side of it and to be that ear and, that listener of how's it going, like it,
Yeah.
even not work related, but just, if you hear anything, I'm always looking for not even what they say, but, you know, just that hesitation, kind of that nonverbal um, pause, where you can pick up on something. And if there is a challenge, it's always good to catch it early because, there's been times where we've gone to that hiring manager and maybe had a conversation with them or encouraged them to have a conversation with the new employee. So I think, if you can stay entrenched in that relationship as much as possible, and on the client side too. And then, I mean, yes, things are going to happen in recruiting, but it's always how you handle it, and if
Great
you
point.
just with transparency and, we have a guarantee. So if something does happen, there's been times where maybe the guarantee has even expired, but when we get a client, we want that client for life. So we do what it takes. Sometimes that's about, doing a placement again because we feel it's the right thing to do, not because the contract says it. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind too, that this is it's a long-term relationship. And so,
Out of curiosity, how long is like your longest client relationship that you've got right now? Just out of curiosity, or like, how
yeah,
much would you estimate it to be?
like 19 years, like one of our first clients that really helped us grow our team. That's when I really needed to start to hire. That's when I hired my first employees, was after I got this client. And they're still a really
Wow.
great client of ours. And we've been able to, probably, I would say we've placed like thousands of people over there. It was a small company to begin with. It was only a couple hundred people when we first started working with them, but they're now a public company and they've grown and expanded. And yeah, it's been a long
But
time.
you get to that point by doing those things that you said, like, if okay, the guarantee ran out, and at that point it's like, are you going to do the right thing and realize like, okay, if I do this, like I'll actually win the longer term relationship? And I feel like in business, you just get that sort of stuff, just it gets forgotten, and you think I love your approach. I mean, that's to me that's a no brainer. It's like kind of hook somebody up and do the right thing. And they're not going to forget that. And at the very least, they're going to go, okay, you guys did a great job and we appreciate it. So we're going to refer you to someone else if they don't have other business. And it's like, the more you do the right thing, then that's what people are going to remember you by. But it gets lost so much in our business. So I love that. Sarah just had a quick question here, and this will be the last question before we get into the recruiter power planner. But I have a question for finding talent in niche areas. How does your team handle this, and what's your take on finding those needle in the haystack kind of candidates when you've exhausted all possible resources? Which I think it's probably, I'm sure you've had a million people that you've trained up ask that question. Like, what do you do when you just can't find anybody and nobody's responding? So I think that's a cool question.
Yeah. And so I think the key is, when you say exhausted all your resources, there's always some other resource. So I don't know if you can ever exhaust it. It's just a matter, I think, of being more creative, and really identifying, like, okay, well, what else? Like, what else can I do to find this person? Because typically our clients, they reach out to us when they can't find that person, when, they've exhausted all their resources and they come to us. So we're kind of the end all for them. That's what we do. We find the needle in the haystack. So I think that, just to give you some practical ideas to try would be to, talk to people that may not be the perfect fit, so they're not your needle in the haystack, but they might know that needle, they might know that expert.
Great.
So I think that that's something that a lot of us sometimes forget when we're recruiting, because we're just looking for that perfect candidate. So I say to cast a wider, bigger net, because you might be surprised who they know, and it might even be maybe their spouse or their next door neighbor, happens to either know someone or, to be that person. So I would say that that's one thing. The other thing is to really go back and go to that client again. It's about keeping that rapport and consultative approach with your client and let them know what you're seeing. So every Friday, we usually follow up with all of our clients that have orders out with us and give them a quick update. So, here's
Super smart.
we've talked to this week. Here's how many people, we've been able to set interviews on our end. Here's what we're finding. We're finding that the people that really match what you're looking for are at $10,000 more than your top. Is there any wiggle room? So I think it's just about, like, massaging that search, and seeing if they can, change the parameters a little bit, or, on the recruiting side, just having a little bit open mind, or maybe, maybe there's some people that they seem like they really could be a good fit, but you haven't been able to reach them. So those people, that's not really an exhaustive search. That's just like, you can't get a hold of them yet. So then it comes to be like, how can you get a hold of them? Can you send them something in the mail? Because a lot of times we forget about direct, good old putting a stamp on it and putting in the mailbox, texting, now I think a lot of us are doing more texting, just reaching out to them maybe in a different way than you have. So have you done that with every single person that you feel might be that perfect fit? So those are just
I love the fact that I think when you get together with your clients and then you're transparent and you're saying, okay, here are the actual candidates that I've reached out to. Here's what I found out. The more data you have that's real and you can show people, and the more transparent you can be, the more of a consultant you can then become. And you can argue a case for, look, okay, this person might not exist. So there's certain things we need to actually change here if we want to be successful in the search. But you only get to that point if you can provide in an intelligent way the data, and you can show, like, hey, I'm not just trying to get like an easy placement here. I'm putting in the work, but look,
right.
this is actually what we need to do. So I think I love the idea of the weekly updates. I know one of the companies I worked for, they were really big on that, and I found that, like, the more honest you were, even with weekly updates, the better it is, because we're, again, in an industry where people like to say the right things to client. And so then you get, promising things that just can't happen. So I love that. But let's and everybody out there too. I know we've got Gabe, Kevin, Gulam, and Tom's out there as well. So we appreciate all of these questions. Great questions. I'm curious to hear more about the EntreRecruiter.com. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the website, and we'll post the link to the website too in the comments for people. But why don't you share a little bit about what you're doing in 2021 with this website and what your goal is for it?
Yeah. So I think, with the kind of new economy within recruiting, I've seen more and more that recruiters are, branching out. Maybe they were laid off. Maybe if they've been a great recruiter for 2 or 3 years, sometimes they have this idea of, wow, I could really go and do something differently, right?
Yep.
And be more of a independent recruiter or a consultant, or maybe they have big aspirations to grow their company, like we talked about earlier. And there's really no manual for, okay, how do you do that? For people that know how to recruit, that's a specialty. For people that are great in sales, there's trainings for that. But there's really no training on how do you build your own business and become, really I call it an entre recruiter. How do you go from being that technician? If you've ever read The E-Myth by
Yep.
Michael, it talks about, you do the work, you love it, and then you have this entrepreneurial like seizure, right? And then you want to go be either, you want to create your own, right? But it's totally different skill sets to be that technician in that job. So in our world, it's recruiting, to become that recruiter and go from that to being a business owner and to be a manager and to, wear all those multiple hats. There's a lot, your hats are, you have a lot of
Oh,
hats.
so it's not super it's not super easy and just like, yeah.
No, and even if you've been doing it for a long time, it's still not easy, and there's no manual. Like, for example, when my kids were young, right? You were like, "Where's the manual?" And this is kind of like, where's the
Totally.
like, how do I become an entrepreneur? How do I become a business owner in what I love doing? And so that's something that, like, that's what makes me passionate. I love helping other people figure that piece out. I love working with other entrepreneurs, and I love recruiting. So I've combined that, and just through my experience of being in business for as long as I have and learning so much. I mean, there's things obviously that, I've learned along the way that have really helped me grow my business professionally. But there's also a lot of things that I've learned that I'm like, okay, don't do that. so so to answer
Yeah.
your 2021, I'm creating this mastermind of people that, want to become more independent and do their own thing, but still be a part of the recruiting, network and industry, because we all need camaraderie. We all need, like you were talking about, like a mastermind. Like, okay, how do I, like, has this come up for anyone else? So for 2021, I am launching that in January, where it'll probably be about 10 to 12 people. I want to keep it small, but
Cool.
it'll, coaching, and every month we'll get on and a lot of it also too is about accountability. We all sometimes know what we need to do, but sometimes we don't do it. So when you can express that to people and have accountability and deadlines, and okay, what's my goal for this month? How much production am I going to bring in? What do I need to do on my business side to either build my brand better on LinkedIn or start working on making my website better? There's a million things, but each month we're going to tackle a different piece of that and bring in network, experts really that have done that, and just, that's where they shine. Just bringing in certain experts that can really help the group not only be better recruiters, but be better, business owners, even if it's a company of one.
Yep.
That's part of it. And really the beginning of it is strategy, right? So with 2021 coming up, it's all about really determining and deciding, okay, what do I want to do? What does my business need to look like next year? What do I want my company? Do I want to grow it? And that's why, Joel, I sent you that link. That is the strategy planner for 2021 that I want to give to anyone, on this call that's interested. It's a free, download. And it really goes over every single thing in your business as a recruiter that you need to do to set up for, a really, really strong 2021.
Yeah, and I love that, and we'll put the link to in the chat. Well, actually, I'll put it in the main post as well. But I think for anybody, I mean, even if you're happy where you're at, I think it's just helpful to know. It's just helpful to know sometimes like what it's like for an owner and all the things that they have to think about, because I've been at different recruitment companies, and it's easy to start thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm doing this, and you start seeing the fees roll in or whatever structure you have, and you just think, oh, okay, wow, this is, man, I'm making this much money for the company, and so I think if you actually take a look and you see all of the things that go into a business, I think it could even give you more appreciation for the support that you have as well, and then you're educating yourself on what it's really like and everything. And obviously, if that's your goal long term, then this would be a no brainer. But I love that. And so with the mastermind group, I mean, you mentioned about 10 to 12 people. So is that going to be like a certain amount of time, or like an ongoing thing, or how can people get involved in that?
Yeah. So I always say it needs to be at least 3 months. Like you need to make that commitment, but it's going to be a year-long program where, like I said, we get together at the beginning of each month, and each person will have different goals, and each person's going to have a different kind of outlook and vision, but it'll be about really, showing up and setting your goals, not only for the year, but for that month. And it could be simple metrics like, okay, I need to make, 30 business development calls every day because that's something that I need to do to grow my business. And you might know that, but actually putting that into effect daily, maybe that's been a stumbling block. Especially as like an individual contributor, a lot of times you're just on this island and you don't have anyone to hold you accountable. So it's really kind of a, part accountability mastermind and part learning, because I always think it's so important to learn something new every single month that's directly going to help you in your business. So yeah, so it'll be monthly. It'll be at the beginning of each month, and really just setting intentions, setting very, very specific metrics that you feel you need to, reach, and then also learning something that's going to help you grow your business.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
bet, I'm sure when you first started out too, you're probably like, man, I wish I had something like that. Or even, because even just from, I've only been in business for myself for the last 2 months, and already quickly realized how important other people are. And I'm lucky to have a really strong community on LinkedIn, for example, where I have really, really close friends and relationships and people who are in a similar situation. And when you have that, I picture if I didn't have those relationships, I would feel extremely lonely. I just feel like, okay, how do I strategize? And so it's great to have people that you can bounce things off and just figure out. And also, like you said, it's that accountability is huge. And do you think more with our industry, it's kind of trending that way to where we're going to see more and more kind of solo entrepreneurs, or like smaller company with maybe a team of 3, 4? Like, do you think that we're just going to see more of that because of kind of how accessible technology has made starting a business in general? What are your thoughts on that?
I really do. Especially too, now everyone is working from home. So before, I think some of the things that people were missing, if they went solo, was they liked being in that office environment and having, like you mentioned, all those people around to like hear someone,
Yeah.
how to close that deal. But now, I mean, we are all at home, most of us, and we are all on an island, whether you're working for another company or not. Most of your day is you. So I think it's going to give people the opportunity more and more to have, we call it kind of that gig economy that's going on with all these other industries. And I'm seeing it a lot more. I'm seeing a lot of people reach out to me that, you know, they want to start their own thing, or they already have, but they're not quite sure exactly, how to get where they want to go. So I
Yeah.
do see that happening a lot more, and it's exciting. I mean, it's
I
exciting.
I personally love it, and I think, um, I mean, it is so interesting because obviously we're in a different time than when you had, the phone and the phone book. It's like there's a lot more data out, but I think at the end of the day, every business, whether you're in recruiting or you're in IT or you've got service or whatever it is, relationships are the key for it all. And it's like, no matter how much data you have, it doesn't really help you with that relationship piece. So but it does help with, there's automation tools. There's tools which can take a lot of like what kind of the mundane parts of our job and automate it. And if it's done right, I mean, you can be pretty powerful as an individual, like really no other time in history. But I think with our industry in general, there is sort of like an old school mindset with a lot of things as well. So it's just an interesting time that we're in, and it'll be interesting to see how those things intersect. And obviously, it's like with phone calls. Like phone calls are crucial. We're not ever going to be able to build a relationship without the phone. But then what about technology like Zoom and having Zoom meetings with clients? There's a lot of different things which are cool. So I love it. I love the fact that you're also about other people. I think within our industry, it's very competitive. And so I love your heart to actually help other people that maybe are even competing against you. I think that's a great change for our industry as well. So I love that.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I mean, there's so much business out there, and I think, there's enough for everyone to go around. And I think the more we can learn from each other and help each other out, that comes back too, So
yeah. No, I love it. Well, we're going to post those links. And I know we've nearly come up to about an hour or so, or about 10 minutes short, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I'd love just before we wrap up here, I always ask people this, or I've been asking it the last couple episodes. Given the time that we're in, what advice would you give to somebody that is particularly, in that 3 to 6 month time period where they're really questioning, like, is recruiting right for me? Is this company right for me? Like, what have I got myself into? Like, what advice would you give somebody, just kind of based on your experience through the years and seeing the ups and downs that can happen within our industry?
Yeah, I would say continue to be consistent and persistent, and just do not quit. I think, some of my most impactful things that I've done in my life have been after I wanted to quit. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt overwhelmed. And it's always that push. If you can push through that and not, just commit not to quit, then, great things are going to happen. Sometimes it just takes longer than you want or anticipate, but it's those people that stay in it that are going to be, there's no way you can not be successful if you keep at it and you keep focusing on the right things within your business. And just keep going. Do not quit.
Love it. I love it. Commit not to quit. I love that. And obviously, anyone who's out there, we're going to post the link, so definitely check that out because I just think it will help you a ton. And Sharon, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? Or what advice would you give for people trying to get a hold of you? How do you like to be contacted?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing would be on LinkedIn, or they can go to that entra-recruiter.com.
Yep.
And just sign up. You can download that planner for free. And yeah,
Perfect.
we definitely, you can connect with me anyway, and we can put my information to my email down below, and
Cool.
talk with anyone.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad we got the sound figured out for this one. I know
About that, I was like, oh gosh.
it's the worst too with live, because it's like on the live show, like on a podcast, it'd be like, okay, scratch this, we'll edit this out. Live show is a little bit different. So I'm really glad we figured that out. And obviously with the people who are asking questions out there too, we're really thankful that you guys were engaged. And Kevin just said thanks for providing that, Sharon. So yeah, Kevin, I'll drop that link. And to everybody else who's out there, we appreciate you. We will be back on Monday with a guest. I'll make that announcement over the weekend. And once again, Sharon, really appreciate you taking the time here today. And just great hearing from you and hearing all the wisdom that you have.
Thanks so much, Joel. It was great to be on.
All right, I'm gonna end this broadcast.